Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, live from the Wildwind Workshop, where, as you know, miracles are happening on a daily basis. Wildwind Sailing Holidays, Wildwind, is, of course, the best place you could possibly go to do some catamaran sailing if you happen to be in Europe or especially Greece. Exactly. Yes, very much so. Yeah, so what we're doing here is a live Q&A session where I am going to be answering your questions about catamaran sailing, whatever they may be. So if you happen to be watching this later on and not live, don't worry. If you do have any questions, you can still put them in the comments below and I will get on to answering those questions in next week's Q&A. All right, very nice. So I'm going to start straight away with a preloaded question, which is from Declan, who I can see is in the live chat as well from Stockholm, Sweden. Now, incidentally, the reason that Declan is having his question addressed first is because he asked me on Patreon, and anybody who asks me a question on Patreon goes to the top of the queue. It's just one of the bonuses of supporting Joyrider TV on Patreon. So here we go. Declan says, I'm contemplating replacing the rigging on my Hobie Getaway with Dyneema. What width cord should you use to replace the wires, shrouds and trapeze wires? Would they need to be different widths? And in addition, what knots would you use to put at the ends of those lines? Well, what have I got here? Oh, it just happened to have a bit of Dyneema here, quite old. Anyway, yes, so replacing your traditional steel rigging for Dyneema is a great choice. It is becoming more common as time goes on because what I've learned is for the same size of cable, Dyneema is much stronger than the steel rigging. Amazing. Yes, I know. So what I would suggest, and I'm sure that people in the comments will probably have their own ideas on this, what should be used, but I would say for the shrouds on the boat, either 3.5 or 4 mil Dyneema it's way thicker than you actually need, but you don't want to go too thin, because if you go too thin, like you could probably use 2.5 mil Dyneema on the shrouds and the forestay of the boat. But if you did that, then what would probably happen is when it's under tension, that would become a bit like cheese wire, if we all know what I mean by cheese wire. So if you went into it, it would be quite sharp and you could injure yourself because of the thinness of that line. So I'd say like 2.5 or 3.5 or 4 mil Dyneema on the shrouds will be ample. Now, one thing, if you're using Dyneema on the forestay, is do you have a rolling jib? And when you roll the jib, does the forestay get rolled as well? Because if it does, what we have to make sure is we're not having this sort of action going on with the rope there like that, because what that might do is that might somehow weaken the rope if you're using the rope as a forestay. So I would probably be with a furling jib. I'd be tempted. In fact, I would dare say that the jib on the Getaway has got a wire luff. So the front edge of the jib has got wire inside, which means that the forestay doesn't actually take the load of the rig, much like on a 16. I'm assuming here. I've never actually seen a Getaway in real life. I think they're much more popular in the USA than they are in Europe. Yeah, so if it's got a wire luff in the jib, then it doesn't matter. Yeah, go for the Dyneema as the forestay as well. Then for the trapeze lines, I would go for a 3mm on the trapeze. That will be as much as you need. Now I'm just going to go rummaging around in this quite conveniently positioned cupboard. Okay, so now Declan asked how we would put loops in the end of the Dyneema. So here's one I prepared earlier. This, I believe, is either a 3.5 or a 4mm, which would definitely be the right kind of diameter for the shrouds and the forestay. But what we don't do with Dyneema is tie knots in it. So if we were going to tie a knot